Peace, peace, peace. Today, I wanted to elaborate some more on the Aquarian age, the whole concept of ages altogether. You know, there is some um, controversy amongst astrologers regarding whether we're actually in the age of Aquarius. Are we still in the age of Pisces? And as far as I'm concerned, it's a matter of measure. And from a practitioner standpoint, um, you got a lot of people who claim to be astrologers who don't even acknowledge this cycle, okay? Who believe that it is the result of a trend uh, in the 70s when they made a song about this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And, that's a bunch of blah, blah to me, all right? We see in the ancient monuments of Egypt, Mexico, India, astrological symbolism concurrent to the age. Schwaller de Lubitz, an Egyptologist, all right, Maurice Bucaille, all of these other contemporary New Age anthropological journalists have been pointing to it, pointing to historic markers. John Anthony West. The Sphinx itself is a symbol of the age of Leo. All right. It was a great lion before they put the human's head on it. All right. It was in the age of Taurus, 1/4 of an entire cycle, 6,480 years after the Sphinx was lined up to the constellation of Leo, because we really don't know what age it was built in. But in about 11,500 BC, it was lined up with the constellation of Leo at the vernal equinox, and we believe that this monument is a testament to that age, as are the many legends that encapsulate the mathematical cycles involved in the precessional motion of the earth. So let me back it up here and bring it all the way to the beginner's point in the matter, because that was just a summary of what I'm going to be getting into here tonight. All right. Everybody here understands that the daylight hours and the nighttime hours alternate. All right. Day, night, night, light. Right. Daytime and nighttime. Right. This is largely because the earth turns on her axis every 24 hours away from the sun, one point on the earth and back to the sun. So it's constantly revolving in the sun. And this revolution is what we derive our concept of days and hours and by. All right, this motion. Well, there are several motions that the earth is involved in. Okay, she spins around 24 hours a day, and she orbits the sun. See, now a lot of flat earthers and scriptural literalists are going to argue this, but argue on. All right. The model I'm here elaborating on is how we derive the concept of time. That's the second motion of our Earth, her orbit around the sun, and that takes 365.25 days roughly. That decimal is a floater, right? Well, there's another grand motion of our Earth that doesn't receive a lot of focus. It doesn't receive a lot of attention. Okay. And it has been mystified and mythologized to the nth degree. All right. Um, over the ages, over the hundreds of years, it has been applied and referenced by poets and literalists and artists, okay, and astronomers alike. It has been, with the science of astrology, mythologized and mystified. Okay, and all kinds of superstition has been attached to it, and all kind of reference is made to it right in your face without you even realizing. Okay, aside from the phraseology, the age of Pisces, the age of Aquarius, you have to understand that the Earth's motion is of it has a third motion, which is a wobble. You know, it spins, it goes around the sun, and it also wobbles like a top. And its wobbling is a very slow, almost imperceptible motion, but it is perceivable by those who have looked for it. And um, they give credit for his discovery to Hipparchus. All right, who's a Greek astronomer, but knowledge of it was evident as it is in the monuments, as it is encoded in the mythology, and it is encoded in the literature that has come down to us from thousands of years ago, and in some of the Vedas, and some of the Vedic literature that they have, the Siddhartha, on the uh, Siddhanta, the Surya Siddhanta. This book here talks about it. You know, these things precede Hipparchus too, right? The knowledge of this. And this third motion is measured and observed from our position here on the planet. When you understand that the Earth is tilted at a 23.5 degree angle, it is not perfectly perpendicular to the plane of its orbit. Okay, when I say the plane of its orbit is if we were to take the path of the Earth around the sun and to create a big dish, a big flat disc out of it, then that is the plane of its orbit. And its angle to the sun is not the same to the angle that it sits on as it rotates. And this causes obliquity. And what is that? Okay, I can explain it like this. Because it is tilted and spinning, the even distribution of time over 30 degrees is not going to be the same because of that obliquity. In other words, in the northern hemisphere, the sign of Pisces is going to rise over the ascendant in a period of about an hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half at best, okay, in the north of the equator. And the sign of Leo is going to take longer, all right? This obliquity is what causes the seasons. All right. This is why a lot of people misnomer um the equinoctial astrological model, or the tropical zodiac, as an actuality, but it's based on the tilt and the obliquity of the signs. Okay, and the equinoxes occur with the daylight hours. So to say that the seasons are what the tropical zodiac is following is really not accurate, right? It is the equinoxes, because if the Earth were at another angle, if the Earth were perfectly perpendicular, we would be in a perpetual state, or it would seem like that for thousands of years, that we were in a perpetual state of equinox. Okay, and the signs would still follow the same rules. And if the Earth was laying on its side, rotating, okay, but laying on its side in the sun, then the signs would be derived from the same geography. I mean, pardon me, the same geometry, right? If you understand that the tropical zodiac is one phenomenon. Okay, we use it to measure the seasons, but it actually changes the daylight hours, and this is what the signs are based on. You see, the Libra is 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night. Okay, so is Aries, by the way. Okay, but you'll find the signs don't receive the same amount of daylight, and this is the true uh, foundation upon which the division of the zodiac is based. And you're going to need to understand that the geometry changes as Earth's path around the sun changes every 30 degrees. We enter into a different frequency. All right, this is the tropical zodiac. Well, the sidereal zodiac is also there. And what is the difference? I just told you the difference. We're using daylight hours to determine the tropical signs, and we are using the positions of fixed stars and the sun's proximity with the earth, this triangulation between the backdrop of the stars, the sun, and the earth for the sidereal zodiac, okay? Which has nothing to do with Earth's surface or the position that we see from Earth's position, okay? That we see with our naked eyes, right? Because even then, the zodiac, the sidereal zodiac, is still artificial. When they say that it's natural, it's still artificial because each of the signs are 30 degrees. Each of the constellations are not 30 degrees. Okay. So these are the two factors that we're taking into consideration, first of all, together. So you can't dismiss one and grasp the other. One zodiac for the other, when you're doing precessional astrology, you need both of them. And certainly there are models of precessional astrology that give indication of the age according to that system that don't require um, both the tropical and the sidereal zodiac. Okay. But the calculation of the sidereal zodiac depends very largely upon where you locate the equinoctial point. You're going to need to locate the equinoctial point. What we call zero, what we tropical is called 0 degrees Aries, is indispensable sidereally, right? But we're taking both of these factors into account in precessional astrology because, and it's based also on other factors in cosmophysics, and that's the reason for this lecture. All right, it's a lot different than what you're going to read in a library book or a book that you get from the bookstore, unless you are dealing with a very good astrologer I'm personally acquainted with named Terry McKinnell. Okay, he's the one who showed me this, and even though he and I don't perfectly agree on where the age starts, we are the observation that I'm using was influenced by him severely. Let me tell you the story. All right, follow along with me. You know, back in 1999, when I first became aware of online astrological communities. All right. So on MSN and on Yahoo, they probably still have them. I don't know. All right. But these lounges or these clubs where everybody can log in and participate astrologically. Okay. And astrologers can come and show off their skills and receive what appears to be peer review from the people in attendance and the people, and there were some really good practicing astrologers peeking in and making comments back in that day. All right. So one day, one of them asked me, and I'm not referencing Terry here, one of them asked me, what age do you think we're in? And automatically, I'm like, we're in the age of Aquarius. And he said to me, how would you prove that astrologically? And I was like, whoa, what do you mean? And my argument from an astrologer's standpoint was truly rather weak. Okay. I said, I believe that the age of Aquarius began when mankind started flying. So you can look in the air and see an airplane to prove that we're in the age of Aquarius, because the age, first of all, is supposed to concur with the collective evolutionary consciousness of humanity. So you're not reading a person when you're doing um, precessional astrology or the astrology of the ages. You're reading the characteristics of a sign and its impact on humanity. If you can bring your mind to conceive of the zodiac and find the words to describe it in that context, then you're able to perform precessional astrology. So when I said around the time of the Wright brothers, because this is when commercial flight was mainstream. So I tried to use that as a foundation to base the idea that we had entered the age of Aquarius. So then his response to me was, So you believe that 1909 or whenever they did the first flight, you believe that that was the beginning of the age of Aquarius. And I was wondering why he kept trying to draw me into the conversation, um, trying to trap me trying to put me in a box, all right? Put parameters around what I was doing. So, but I went along with him and I said, yeah, okay, I would give it the 1900, the year 1900. He said, well, how would you feel if I told you, how would I feel? If I told you that I know an astrologer from Australia who says that the age of Aquarius started before Leonardo da Vinci was born, or around the time Leonardo da Vinci was born. And I said, you would have a very Eurocentric minded, historical, resourced astrologer on your hands. And he said, why is that? I said, because I can think of other people other than Leonardo da Vinci, before Leonardo da Vinci, that was trying to fly. You know, I was aware of a Persian, I forget his name now, but I could easily find him. They have a statue of him in Tehran right now at the airport. And this guy tried to fly before Leonardo da Vinci tried to fly. All right, was creating machines. But anyway, so so anyway, um, I went and I argued with the dude Terry for months. Okay, and it wasn't a hostile argument. It was I was picking his measure apart, looking for flaws in his measure, and bringing him the results. If you really do astrology, you understand that astrology exists on a micro level. Okay. In other words, we break the signs in the deacons. That's one level of micro astrology. It goes even deeper when we break it into 12 dwads or break the signs into harmonic fractals. All right. So that's what we're doing here. Or that's what he was doing. So what he said to me was, you're describing the age of Aquarius, the entire 2,160-year block, with a mere paragraph of 4 or 5 sentences. And as an astrologer, he says, you know that there is a sequence of events that follows the chronology of the signs, even when you break it down into sub levels and sub degrees. I'm going to show you how I do that. I'm going to give you an example of that, primary example. So you're not really wondering at the end of this lecture what I meant by what I said. All right. So he said, you know, you do this in natal astrology, because I was well aware of it on a natal, on a birth chart, personal, person to person level. I was aware of the micro fractals that we use in astrology and how to use them. But I had never even thought to apply them to the ages. Okay. And that's what he introduced me to. And my argument meant, which he crushed them all. Yeah, he crushed them all. Astrologically speaking, he showed me the error of my logic. Okay. But even today, we differ, but our logic doesn't differ. When you understand that the sign involved in the measure must reflect traditionally, according to his traditional keywords, the event. So for people who say, well, the vernal point is still in Pisces, which it is, it's at 5 degrees Pisces right now, then this is their justification for the idea that we're still in the age of Aquarius. And the vernal point crossing the celestial equator has not reached the constellation of Aquarius yet, nor has it reached the boundary of Aquarius tropically when you convert it to a tropical measure. So, but for those people who don't understand the terms that I've used so far, I'm going to need to clarify it for you. All right? You understand that the Earth itself has an equator, okay? And it has poles. The poles are a human construct, as is the equator, okay? Because you can't go to this location on Earth and find a big line painted around it with an EQUATOR on it, okay? We understand that. But spherical geometry, the equator is going to be the midpoint of the poles, no matter where we go on the globe. And if you consider this equator as being spread out everywhere in every direction, like a plate, okay, like Saturn's rings, then we have what we call the equatorial plane. All right. Looking at that from the side, the equatorial plane is our mental construct to give us an idea how to separate the upper heavens from the lower heavens from our perspective here on Earth. So everything in above, north of this line, is considered the northern hemisphere, and everything south of it in space is considered the southern hemisphere. Well, this line is called the celestial equator, and I'm going to abbreviate, okay? It's the celestial equator. All right? Now, then you have, that is not the orbit of the Earth, okay? That is not the Earth's orbit. That is the Earth's equator projected into space, all right? The Earth's orbit is an entirely another path that we call the ecliptic, okay? And that's this dotted line, okay? And the ecliptic is the path that the Earth takes around the sun, all right? But from our position on the Earth, it looks like the path that the sun takes through the sky, right? If the sun were to leave a trail, that end of the year, that great circle that we see would be the ecliptic. And this is the circle that composes the astrological chart. That circle is shrunk down to the size of your paper so that it can be illustrated for you so you can know geometrically what position the sun appears to be in from our perspective here on this planet Earth. Well, that line is called the ecliptic. Okay? What is the ecliptic? It is the apparent path of the sun through the zodiac, but it is actually Earth's path around the sun, okay? Now, where these 2 points converge on the first day of spring is considered the vernal point. What did I say the vernal point was? It's the point in space where the vernal equinoctial point, where the celestial equator and the ecliptic intersect. Okay, and this happens on the first day of spring and on the first day of autumn. All right, we're dealing with the spring equinoctial point here. All right, not the autumnal equinoctial point at this point. All right. So now that point creates the vernal point. And to date, that point now is about 5 degrees of Pisces. Sidereal Pisces. Stellar Pisces. Okay? I agree with them all that the vernal point is in 5 degrees of Pisces. I have no argument with that. I have no disputes with that. All right? It's the vernal point. So you know what the vernal point is. Now understand that this point, because the Earth is wobbling at a very slow rate, this vernal point, moves along the ecliptic, which is 360 degrees. This vernal point moves approximately 1 degree every 72 years. So the vernal point moves retrograde, moves backwards through the zodiac. That's what the R is for, all right? 1 degree every 72 years, which creates an entire platonic, they call it a platonic year or a precessional year or a great year, okay? And that great year here in this scheme, catch me, 1 degree every 72 years is the scheme, okay? So this 1 degree every 72 years will allow us to go around the entire zodiac in a period of 25,920 years This is the canon average. All right? 1 degree every 72 years. We know that it's so not constant that it varies little from this number, but it varies. Understand that. This is why different societies had different numbers. The Mayans had a calendar that their precessional measure was precisely 26,000 years, consisting of 360 degrees of solar flux, which is really 25,980 something years. Okay, which is not very much different than this number here. So when the Mayans said that their calendar was one of 5 worlds, you should know to multiply that number by 5 and you have a precessional cycle. So the Mayan calendar is a very accurate tool for measuring 1/5 of a precessional year, which is 25,920 years. Okay, when I first heard this, I was like, man, what use can an astrologer have for a cycle that he will never live to see, nor will he ever live to collect enough evidence to support this number? So what use is it? And for years, as an astrologer, I ignored the whole idea of precessional astrology just because of that idea. And because the generalized delineation you give for an age of 2,160 years is by far enough to illustrate for any individual what may have actually occurred or what can actually occur having to do with that symbolism over a period of 2,160 years. Was that too much? In other words, we say this is the age of Aquarius, and that was the age of Pisces. And in the age of Pisces, we were predominantly a maritime dominant people. That all over the world, the primary and most elite form of travel was over and through the water. And that now we are in the Aquarian age, we look at the arrow. We are in arrow time, people. We actually fly through the motherfucking air now. Okay, we are no longer limited to taking boats across great bodies of water to move from point A to point B. We can go through the air now. So, but then that's the end of it, right? This is the age of technology. What is that, the end of it? Where's the intricacy? So this was the challenge that Terrence McKenna posted to me. That he's like, if you natally can use section fractal astrology to justify the trends that the natural 30-degree blocks don't give you, then certainly we can do the same thing with the ages, but it must stand up to a particular mathematical regimen, as all astrological measure does. Okay? If you know anything about predictive astrology, and let's say you're using primary directions, then the distance between 2 planets is 10 degrees and let's say 30 minutes of arc, 10 and a half degrees entirely. So you know that that's exactly 10 and a half solar years. Well, that 10 and a half solar years figure is derived from the 10 and a half solar degrees that you are measuring in the birth chart. This is justification for the astrology, showing scientifically from where such a prediction, the prediction consisting of the 2 themes that the 2 planets represent in some form of combination, that would be the prediction. But the timing of it is entirely dependent on the geometry between those 2 planets. So then the same rule must be applied to the age, to the concept of the ages. Okay? So let's go back to the vernal point. All right? The vernal point is here now, located at 5 degrees Pisces. And for some people, the vernal point itself, from this point on, we're going to call it the VP. All right? And since it moves retrograde, this is the symbol for the vernal point here. For this exercise, okay, for this lecture, all right? The VPR, which equals 1 degree every 72 years, and a full cycle, 25,920 years. Now, astrologically speaking, we are following the rules. What do I mean by that? Well, we're using the foundation of a science of geometry that divides the ecliptic into 12 different signs to develop 12 different natures or 12 different frequencies of solar expression here on this plane of event. So this 25,920 year circle is divided into 12, just like the natural circle of the year is divided into 12. But when we divide this number into 12, 1/12 of 25,920 is 2,160. So this is the figure we are using to determine the length of an age. Okay? 2,160 years is the length of an age. Right? And this constraint is what we're going to be using to determine where on the ecliptic we should be deriving our delineation, our interpretation of planetary positions and points and signs to determine what age it is. Let's take into consideration first the authorship of this idea. All right? Because you have some astrologers out there that are like, yeah, this shit came from a song, and after that, other astrologers have fed into the trend, but there's no real evidence that an age exists. Listen, man, this is not true. But you have to think astrotheologically. It will never be evidence if you don't know astrological symbolism and don't consider the astrological symbolism to be pertinent to the fact. And why do I say this? It's because the age of Gemini is like between 7,000 and 5,000 BC. Okay, more precise number, 7,187 BC is where I clock Gemini is beginning. Okay, and I clock it as ending in 5,027 BC. All right, and the justification for this, I'm getting ready to demonstrate for y'all, but before you actually see it in motion, in demonstration, you have to conceive of its construct. So I'm going to show you how I constructed it and how it is constructed, okay? We are using classical fractal 12ths, the 12th harmonic, okay? Dodecahedron ideology here. All right, but we are dividing this entire cycle of 2,160 years into 1/12 of this cycle, and we are going to divide that thus into 1/12. We're going to keep the 1/12 rule running. Astrologically speaking, the sun expresses itself in 12 different ways. Astrologically speaking, when we look at a person's birth chart, the 12 cusps and the 12 signs represent the 12 modes of expression of the person that you're reading or the matter that you're analyzing. So we should follow the same rules here, taking the astronomical precessional motion and natural undisputable phenomena, scientific astronomical phenomena, and applying it to an astrological capacity and using it to measure the consciousness of humanity. Okay? Now, what's great here is that in any astrological discipline, before you can learn to use whatever you're reading or whatever tools, celestial tools you're using to predict the future, before you can pronounce what this aspect and what these two aspects and what these two symbols moving together in the sky are said to give indication to on Earth, before you can say what they're going to do with future reference, you must have had seen them. Okay? You must have had seen them on quite a few occasions in the past. Let me just say this with more clarity. In order for you to say what it's going to be, you have to see what it's been. Okay? So that's what the good thing about this precessional astrology is because we already have history laid out for us. Some of it is a lie. And you'll find the history that is a lie doesn't concur with the measure. And does that mean that because it doesn't concur that the measure must be a lie? No, you have to be sure that your measure is accurate first. You have to be sure that you are measuring things accurate. How do you know? Well, that which is apparent cannot be hidden, altered, or dismantled by propaganda. You know, like, for example, everybody saw the World Trade Center fall. Now, what about it we didn't see has nothing to do with my point here. I believe it was an inside job, but nobody saw that. But we all saw them fall. So there is no question that those towers fell. All right. How they fell is another thing. All right. It's a whole nother argument. Right. It's the same thing here. We are not using astrology flexibly here. Okay. We are using it inflexibly. And what do I mean by that? Is it the time that you set it on must read the reality without force. Okay? And if you don't have an understanding of astrology already, then that's going to be one of the first things you're going to have to tackle and wrap your mind around. All right? You have to be able to conceptualize what these things are. And I'm going to help you out with that, but just understand as we go along what's going on with that idea. All right? Do not lose idea of the fact that we are moving at the rate of 1 degree of ecliptic every 72 years of lifelong experience. Okay? And we are moving backwards through the zodiac. Okay? But now let me show you how to establish the measure through which to count. Okay? Wherever you want to start your age at, like let's say you do your own research, as I have done, and you find a sequence of historical events that follows astrological chronology, the same chronology I'm showing you here, to the T without deviance. And that observation causes you to differ in terms of the year that I'm using, right? If you can constantly show it, then you'll disprove what I've done. Or you'll show another possible route or perspective from which to see it, and it can be totally different than my own. Okay, but you still have to follow the astrological rules and line up these symbols per timing. See, this is something we cannot create and that we cannot bend, right? Which is the math. So we have here the entire age, whatever age it is, okay? Because we're doing all ages the same way. It's 2,160 years. Every age is 2,160 years. So let's just consider this our ruler right here. Okay? The first thing we want to do is to divide this into 3 720-year phases. Okay? So each one of these is 720 years. Right? These are going to be the deacon ages. 720-year period, 720-year period, another 720-year period. All right. This is every age, no matter whether we're studying the age of Aries, the age of Pisces, the age of Aquarius, the age of, we're going to break that age primarily into 3 separate parts. And we're going to ascribe to them their deacons as the deacons are assigned to the signs traditionally. Okay. After that, we're going to break each deacon, each 720-year period, into 4 periods. Okay? So that each deacon will have 4 sections. Each one of these sections is going to be 180 years. If you'll notice, there are 12 of them. Each one of these is 180 years. Okay? Now we have here the beginnings of a ruler by which to measure every age. We're not done here. This is the math applied. And you understand we are moving from the end of an age to the beginning of an age. So this, you know that this entire thing is 30 degrees. And that each one of these 720 years is equivalent to 10 degrees. And that each one of these 180-year sections is equivalent to 2.5 degrees. So every 180 years, by the precessional marker, 1 degree every 72 years, every 2.5 years, we're gonna, every 2.5 degrees is gonna be 180 years. And therefore, 10 degrees is going to be 720 years. And 30 degrees represents 2,160 years from beginning to end. Okay? I mean, I know this is a lot, but you can rewind this tape after it's there for play, right? You can take notes, right? Now, we're applying this here now at the 180-year level. So in other words, we're looking for significant astrological markers to be matched by historic events every 180 years. And with regards to the age of Aquarius, with regards to the age of Aquarius, I purport that 1453 was the beginning of the age of Aquarius. Okay? And that 1633 was the end of the first duad of Aquarius. And that this one, starting in 1633, ended in 1813. And that one starting in 1813, the next one ended in 1993. Okay? And that this one will end in 2173. Okay? So we already have, we're here in the 4th Dwadashama of the Aquarian age. Okay? According to my calculations. We're here in the 4th one. The first Dwadashama of the Aquarian age is Capricorn. Because it moves backward through the zodiac, we come through the last Dwad first. All right? The first Dwad is Aquarius. The last one is Capricorn. The next one after that is Sagittarius. And the one after that is Scorpio. and the one after that is Libra. Okay? So we are now in the Libra Dwad of the Libra Deacon of the Aquarian age. You understand that? Okay, this is the rule of measure that I'm going to use. All right? And this rule of measure is going to concur, historically speaking. And it's not going to concur if we move anywhere more than 15 years, either side of any of these years. In other words, if I deviate more than 15 years, either side of these numbers, I'm gonna mess up. Now, 15 years seems like a very large gap. But 15 years in the scope of 25,920 years isn't even 4 minutes compared to 24 hours. You know, we're taking a 24-hour circle and pinpointing something to the second, really, when we pinpoint these sub-ages. Now, what I said earlier was that the symbolism has to reflect the nature of events. So I'm going to show you that, all right? That between 1453 and 1633, that we were in the sub-age of Capricorn in the Aquarian age. We were in the Capricorn sub-age. A Capricorn is the sign of obstruction. It is also the sign of demolition, okay? It is also the sign of construction, okay? But it is primarily the symbol of obstruction in symbol terms. In any astrological school, they would say Saturn or Capricorn points to an obstruction. So we could say it represents walls, okay? Politically, it represents a feudal system. Capricorn is corporations, it's barons and counts and landlords. Okay? It's the authority in the land, the noble class, and what have you, right? You keep all of these things in mind with Capricorn because in 1453, all right, we're in the Aquarian age of invention. Okay? Scientific invention. We are in the scientific age of invention, the age of technology. Well, in 1453, what great or what seriously impacting scientific invention swayed the course of mankind? If you know history, you'll know that in 1453, the Ottoman Turks commissioned some European cat to build a gigantic cannon, a cannon bigger than mankind has ever seen. And Aquarius talks about scientific invention and engineering. Okay, and it was quite a feat of engineering for this cat to create this cannon, because he created the cannon to knock down a wall, the wall at Constantinople. A wall that hadn't been knocked down in 600 years and had been constantly attempted at. So this cat achieved what no one else in history for damn near 1,000 years before him was able to achieve. Now, I do believe that is noteworthy, his history, to mark the beginning of the age of Aquarius. Okay? Aside from the fact that from Japan to Europe, from Russia to South Africa, feudalism, 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 which is symbolic to Capricorn, was the prevalent form of government globally. Okay? Pay attention to how Capricorn means black, and it means to fall. All right? This is the year that the Moors fell. The mid-1400s, they expelled from Europe. Their lands declared confiscated by the Catholic Church. They were ousted. You know, Aquarius represents your social tendency. It also represents being ostracized, being cut off, all right? Being set apart, all right? Disassociation is also Aquarius, right? So the history of Africa and its people and the colored people of the world started to take a plunge here at this point. Okay, this is the big argument for me when they say that the sign of Cancer represents the black race. You know, like I'm like, how? You know, based on this philosophy is not enough. We need some evidence here. We need a measure that shows and proves consistently that this sign is representative of this people. When every sign represents all people. Understand that, all right? But you can get particular with the races, and we'll do that a little later too, right? But first, and it's not to be racist, right? It's to show you that different types of people are pointed to, astrologically speaking, all right? But to stay in this timeline here, in 1633 to 1813 is the Sagittarius sub-age of Aquarius. We still in the Libra Deacon, though. All right, we're still in the Libra 720-year umbrella. We're still under that one. And we're under the 2,160-year umbrella of Aquarius. And we're under this 180-year umbrella of the Sagittarius between 1813 and 1633, going backwards. All right. It is during this time that the trade secrets and the trade routes were made public, were made known to the entire world. This is Sagittarius, okay? The transatlantic slave trade, the trans-Pacific, the trans-Indo-Oceanic slave trade, all of that really blossomed and flourished here. And the mixing of foreigners globally occurred more in this Dwadashama until later Dwadashamas, okay? Up to this point, the mixing of the different nations and different people started to amalgamate and become commonplace here. It was in these years that all of the ports were open, that Perry convinced Japan to open up their ports to the world for commerce, okay? That the knowledge of trade routes through the Pacific and through the Atlantic became known, all right? And that the modes of transportation, the railroad, was established, okay, during this Dwadashama, during this 180-year transcontinental railroad. And the way man traversed the planet permanently changed during this year, all right? And this was the great mixing of all the foreigners and all the different nationalities too, all right? Sagittarius here, right? So at the end of this, 1813 is the end in this measure of the Sagittarian sub-age, right? Well, what does it give light to? It gives light and life to the Scorpio subsection. You know, Scorpio represents DNA. Do you know that Scorpio represents genocide, murder, deprivation of inheritance, as well as the gain of inheritance? Okay, and it really points, when you combine the idea of Scorpio with Aquarius, then we think about the murder of mankind. We think about genocidal trends and in history manifesting. And I did a search, okay? I used Chat GPT for this search too, okay? I can't always go with Chat GPT, but I doubled this search up with Google and Yahoo and me, so that I could see what history and documentation had to say about this period of time. So I asked it the question without any astrological indicators involved. I said, other than the years between 1993 all the way back to 1813. Other than this period of time, when has mankind demonstrated a knack for genocidal behavior? When has man engaged in genocide more so than during this period? And there has been no other period in human history, okay, historically recorded, okay, emphasis on historically recorded, incidents of genocide to prevail over the incidents of genocide that occurred in this 180-year phase, okay? Side note, we also take these 180-year periods and we break them down into 60-year periods and 15-year periods and assign them their proper astrological token or symbolism. See? This 60-year block concurs with the grand cycle of Jupiter and Saturn. And this concurs with breaking that cycle up into 4. All right? You also have an 18-year eclipse cycle that you can neatly fit 3 times into the 60-year phase here. Okay? Each time. Right? If you're paying attention to the cycles, you'll see how their symbolism manifests. I brought this up to show you that even in the Scorpio dwar from 1813 to 1993, that in this Dwadashama, 1951 fell here. Okay? This is the Capricorn sub-dwar. And 11 years before DNA equals Scorpio and Capricorn equals structure. The structure of DNA was discovered in the Capricorn structure sub-dwar of the Scorpio dwar of the Aquarian age. So that's the discovery of the genetic structure right there for you, if you understand the language. And one of my students tried to test this, as you should, right? She tried to test it. She said, well, what about the freezer? When the first freezer was sold. And when we found the first freezer was sold, the first freezer, Aquarius is freezing. So in the micro dwar of Aquarius, in the dwar of Scorpio, in the age of Aquarius, the preservation of meat through freezing was discovered and implemented. So we have here in these charts a means by which to tell time, to tell the nature of the times, and we can use this to look backwards through time. Okay, let me give you an example. Okay, if you know about the Olmec heads, all right, then the symbol of the head, astrologically speaking, is Aries. Okay, well, in the Aries dwar of the Aries age, which is like the last, from it ended around 707 BC. So the last 100 years, the last 180 years of the Aryan age, which lasted from 2867 BC to 707 BC. All right. If you see that 2,100 year scope, at the very end is when they started dropping those Olmec heads from 600 to 900 AD. We find more Olmec heads dropped up and down the Mississippi River Valley and throughout Mexico. You understand that? The heads concur with the sign of Aries. And the fact it was in the Aries dwar even reinforces the fact that they were dropping heads all over the Americas. Like they were actually in tune with this astrological rhythm. All right. We find the same example, okay, using this timing with the age of Pisces in the Aries Dwadashama, okay? And this is between 1093 AD and 1273 AD. That this is the Aries Dwad of the Pisces age. Now, you know that's religious wars. And all 12 of the Crusades neatly fit there in that block of time between 1093 and 1273 AD. Okay? And then if we go back to the Cancer Dwad of the Piscean age, Cancer is ruled by the moon, and thus the crescent moon is also said to be the ruler of that position in the chart, right? That with Cancer there and the moon, this is symbolic to the Prophet Muhammad. He came about, Islam came about during that time, and how coincidentally is it that they use the moon as their logo? Okay, whether the religion, whether you subscribe to the religion or not, historically speaking, this is where they made their emergence on the historic scene. And the fact that their symbolism concurs with the astrology is far beyond me. Okay, now what I need to go into more is the factors that determine the measure. Because you feel like a lot of people may feel like we just made all of this shit up, you know, when there's no way in the world that we can lock into time, into reality, into the historic chronology, events that perfectly concur with the unfoldment of the order of the zodiac as it has always been since time immemorial. All right? The factor here that I described to y'all earlier was the vernal point, the ecliptic, and the celestial equator. Okay? That vernal point, okay, is what they are using to mark the beginning of the age from their perspective. But from what I understand, the Egyptians, when they created this measure, were using heliacal considerations. Heliacal. And I'm not the only practitioner who considers this to be accurate, to be true, that the Egyptians used the heliacal measure and celestial factor in all of their astronomical and probably astronomical considerations. Okay? And what is heliacal? Well, you have heard of the heliacal rising of Sirius. Okay? And that they use the heliacal rising of Sirius to begin and commence their year. Okay? Because it actually concurred at the time with the summer solstice. All right? So, and it was very in close proximity to the summer solstice. Okay? That's what I mean by concurrence, right? So, then they use that for the beginning of the year. But they use that heliacal factor everywhere. And it is highly doubtful that they omitted it. So what does that got to do with the age? Very good question. First, let's understand what this heliacal factor entails, really. Okay? Let's say this is the horizon. Okay? And this is the sun about to rise. Well, his glare comes up before he does. You understand that? His glare surrounds him like a halo. Halo is called the sun's corona. And it's usually 15 to 18 degrees in width, depending on how bright the star that we're trying to measure in this heliacal scope exists, how bright it is. Because a star that is of the highest magnitude can be seen somewhere around 14, maybe even 13 degrees. But another star of lesser magnitude, of lesser brightness, probably cannot be seen until the 15th degree or the 18th degree. And that's exactly what the Egyptians did. If there was a star rising right here at the edge of the sun's corona, then this star was considered to be towing the sun, to be the sun's charioteer. And this star would be considered the vehicle of the sun. And thus the charioteer of the age, the symbol of the age, is symbolized by the charioteer of the sun at that moment. And since, if we look at 1453, at the spring equinox of 1453, we will find Aquarius B, the most eastern star in Aquarius's constellation, will be Aquarius B. It will be right at the edge of the sun's corona, and thus this is why I'm using 1453 as the marker of the age. Now, at the point that this actually happened in 1453, the sun was at 15 degrees of Pisces. So you're going to have people that want to argue that we're still in the age of Pisces and that it began here because it started at the age of 15. It started in the age while the sun was at 15 degrees of Pisces. But what they're not taking into consideration is a corona that blocks your view, that blocks your ability to see any constellations here, any stars here in the sun's corona are going to be invisible to you. Okay? And since in appearance, as the sun rises this way, this group of stars appear to be that which is pulling the sun. This is what the Egyptians used as the symbol and the marker for the age. And if that is the case, since this was 15 degrees and Aquarius B is visible in the sun's corona at 15 degrees, that when the sun's corona reached the edge of Aquarius B, the age of Aquarius began. Okay? And I'm using this measure because we have celestial motion to support it. We have celestial bodies to reinforce it. Okay? And then we are following the astrological rule. Since Aquarius is the marker for the age for the next 2,160 years, we need to set our measure of Aquarius up accordingly. Then Pisces ends in 1453 and Aquarius begins. It's going to run for 2,160 years, and we're going to chop it into 180-year segments. Okay? We're going to do the same thing going backwards. Okay? I concerned myself with that over the last 3 weeks or so. Actually, I did a nice little calendar of the ages going all the way back to 39,587 BC. Because first I had to entertain what they were saying. I was watching a documentary on YouTube about Zep Tepi. And they purport that it may have started 39,000 years ago. And I understand through reading the Egyptian mythology, their records, and Herodotus' account and a few other Greek accounts of what they were doing with these ages, that they may very well have been talking about a time that was 38,000 years ago, because when you look at the entire records of the King's List, it goes back that far. Okay? And we're modern our anthropologists and European archaeologists, for the most part, want to claim that that's just mythology. How do you tell tell us that the people who left monuments that were built with almost perfect precision, that they were able to design these monuments and to state that these monuments would stand for thousands of years? And then, but what they had to say about their own history was hogwash and unfathomable and incalculable, because they said Horus was here 36,000 years ago. Why is that untrue? I don't know. But what I do, when I contemplate these things astrologically, I'm of the mind that the man has been on this planet millions of years longer than they say we have. I'm going to look at it with that mindset. I'm going to do my astrology with that mindset too. Okay. So, anyway, so now we established how we're going to read each one of those signs. So, when I got back to Terry McKenna, it's like I hadn't seen him in like 10 or 15 years. Right after the MSN groups were disbanded, I didn't get back online and engaged until like 2010, 2011. I didn't get back online and get enthused about the internet again. And when I did, I got in contact with Terry. I saw him on Facebook, and I said, "Yo, I've been researching that measure that you showed me about 10 years ago." He remembered who I was too. And he said, "Yeah, I remember you." He was like, "Girl, I finally put that in book form." So I went and bought the book, and then I got back with him again, and I was like, I don't agree with you on on shortening the length of that cycle and to appease academic measures. He said, "Yeah, but there was no way I was going to be able to appeal to the academic side of that from an astrological standpoint if I use mathematics, if I use the canon mathematics that y'all use. I mean, that we always use. Well, I had to use their math. So with that, we had a discourse about how I had a thing like it doesn't matter what they think. Because at the end of the day, you have to be perfectly accurate. And once you go back like 4 or 5 deacons, you're already off by a Dwada Shama. So that's 180 years that you're sacrificing being correct. The further back you go, the more that 180 years is going to increase. He understood my position, and because I had measured it, he conceded that the traditional measure is always the best route to take. However, because he was trying to fashion his formula for a college program and he wanted it accepted by the academics, he fashioned it according to their parameters, right? But I'm not going to do that, all right? And hopefully you won't either. Because when I've tried, I mean, it works for about 500 or 600 years. And then once you get beyond that 600-year margin, it starts to get more and more and more and more and more and more inaccurate the further away you get from that initial block where it did align. And you're going to find this if you don't insist on rooting it in traditional astrological measure. Okay? Once you find where those dots connect, they connect from here out till forever. All right? And I understood that when I lined up the sub-age of the Scorpio Dwad of the Aquarius age. I looked at 1951. Okay, I looked at that 51-year stretch. I mean, that 15-year stretch in that 180-year spread in that 2,160-year spread. And when that first lined up, because of that 15-year consideration, that 15-year micro series measure, we're able to keep it accurate for hundreds of years, no matter how far back we go. All right. So one day, one of my students named Everett, I might be familiar with him from Facebook, right? He does conceptual astrology now, right? He said, yo, he tried to do a different measure, tried a variation on the measure. What I was trying to express to him was that no matter how you line it up, that 15-year submarker is there to keep you from going too far away from the official date that this should be used. All right. In other words, like I said earlier at the beginning of it, if I deviate 15 years, either side of those numbers, then they're not going to register as they register. Then the world's history track record for genocide doesn't fall in the Scorpio Dwad. And it should. Okay? Then the marker for the transatlantic slave trade and for the opening up of maritime ports all over the world fits perfectly within the Sagittarius 180-year block. Okay? This is what we do in order to find the pattern, all right, to uncloak or unveil the pattern that exists within it, okay? So Everest came to me one day, all right, this is where I was going with that. He came to me with an archaeological article that he found online, okay? And he was as interested in seeing if the method we were using could prove it as he was interested in seeing if we couldn't. You know, he was like, yeah, can you find justification for this history in that measure? Okay. And what was the history he was referencing? You still might be able to find it online right now. But they were talking about how Europeans are lactose tolerant and how the gene for lactose tolerance was evolved, and they gave a date that was like 9,600 something BC is the date that they gave. And the claim that they made was that these people dispersed from the Central Asian plateau into Europe around 9,000. So he was like, let's see if the precessional astrology supports this. Okay. And the lactose tolerant gene that became emergent amongst Europeans came in the it was the age of Cancer, which is the sign of lactose. All right. 9,000 BC thereabouts, right? And 9,300 something BC. And it was in the Sagittarius Dwad. Okay? Sagittarius talks about nomadism, nomadic lifestyle, moving around, right? And just like the article said, so we're looking at it astrologically in hindsight. All right? We're justifying the astrology of it in hindsight. We're not doing the astrology first. We did the history first here. Then we went to see if the astrological measure justified it. And it talked about these people being a nomadic people migrating from the Central Asian plateau into the Caucasus Mountains and settling there, all right, in Turkey and around Greece and Anatolia and around these areas, okay? And so we looked at history up astrologically and found that Sagittarius concur with their migratory nature, and the fact that it was in the age of Cancer talked about the lactose tolerance of it all right? So even there, we even looked at not only the Crusades and the Olmec heads, we looked at some archaeological finds about cave people that had to be it was in the age of Virgo, so it was like 13,000, 14,000 BC was the age that they gave to these rocks and these paintings, right? So when we look back to it, what the scientists said actually concurred. He was like, these people at this point were hunter-gatherers. Gatherers is Virgo lifestyle, y'all, okay? They made baskets. They wove baskets. All right. And they did these cave paintings and they were hunting horses. All right. Crazy. All right. Horses, all this Sagittarian shit, all this Jupiterian shit. Right. So when we actually did the research on it mathematically through this measure, we get to a Sagittarius dwell. So what we see is when we're talking about migratory peoples, we get recurrence. When we're talking about invasion, we get recurrence of the sign there, okay? But even when the Sagittarius, which is like the sign of invasion, is prominent, then it isn't until Capricorn that the people are conquered. You see what I'm saying? So when we look at these trends, we can measure history and perhaps the future. When I consider how the Scorpio Dwad pointed to genocides, you had the genocide, the not just genocides, the Holocausts. Okay, the worst Holocausts occurred in the Scorpio Dwad of the Aquarian age to date. All right. So when I look at that, and then I look at the Sagittarius Dwada Shama, and I'm like, damn, this here points to when they opened up all the seaports and people began to travel all over the world, and the cultures really started mixing together and prominently as far as we could see in history, right? And how in the Capricorn Dwada, they invented the penal system, which is being locked down, right? The concept of locking down a human being or limiting their motion is all Capricorn. The feudal system was in full effect globally. Corporations were forming, you understand, all in the name of independence, all right? All in the name of liberty, whether it was depriving someone of their liberties or bolstering the liberties of another people, right? When I see that the history of the prophets throughout any religion concur with the symbolism of the signs, it blows my mind. Like I'm going to show you something. Okay. The age of Pisces. Okay. And the age of Pisces began in 707 BC. It didn't end until 1453. But when we do all the math to this thing that we did to the other thing, we do the same measure. Okay? For the age of Pisces. The age of Pisces starts off in Aquarius. Okay? Okay? Because it starts at the end, right? It starts off in Aquarius. And this is 707 and for the next 180 years. Okay, so you subtract the 707 to like 500 something BC. All right. Aquarius is the first Dwadashama, the first 180-year phase of the age of Pisces. And Buddha is said to have been born in this phase, closer to 550 AD than 707 BC. But still, he was born in the Aquarius Dwadashama of the Pisces age. That was Buddha. That Muhammad is said to have been born during the lunar phase, and the symbol for Cancer is the crescent, right? And this one concurs with Muhammad. Pardon that I skipped over this one here. Okay? 7 BC, or they're close to, is when they say Jesus was born, right? And Jesus is the prophet that demonstrated resurrection, right? Because none of the other prophets were resurrected, okay? He would have been born, if it was true, he was born in the Scorpio Dwad of the Pisces age, okay? And Scorpio is the sign of resurrection. Pluto is the symbol of resurrection, okay? You have here every 600 years, with this one being empty. We don't know who that one was supposed to be, okay? Between 1273 and 1453. There's a lot of people they want to claim. All right. I don't know who to claim. I don't claim any of them. All right. But when we see this pattern, this messianic pattern, right, that comes out of the Neros, it can even be gauged by this mechanism, by this measure. This is what I wanted to demonstrate. That it is consistent even with the scriptures. Even if you don't believe in the scriptures, there's got to be some explanation for its concurrence, for how these things all work well together like that. All right? And the fact that Buddha taught enlightenment through meditation, and we know that Pisces is symbolic to the meditative mind state, to trance states of mind, to dreaming, to being in altered consciousness. Okay, this is the direct method that Buddhists use to attain specific vibratorial frequency mind state equivalence. All right, then we understand that he taught enlightenment Aquarius through meditation, Pisces. Okay, through acts of compassion too. Compassion for humanity was one of his number one things, right? That when Jesus came, he was fighting for his life. He was trying to survive. And that they say he was killed. Okay, even if that ain't true, all right? The fact that the prevalent literature, the prevalent version, came out to be the resurrection, that concurs perfectly with the astrological symbolism, okay? And that by the time Muhammad is said to have come, they're using the crescent as a symbol for Islam, okay? And in the age of Pisces, I don't have a representative. I don't have a persona. What I have is an institution. That the Catholic Church, with their symbol of the fish, made themselves prevalent between 1273 and 1453 AD. They instituted the practice of baptism. Somebody tried to say, oh, no, the Egyptians invented baptism. Nobody said the Catholic Church invented baptism. So slow down. I said they implemented it made it a part of their institution at the end of the age of Pisces, okay? That the Catholic Church was able to hide all of the knowledge they were able to confiscate and steal and pillage from all of the people that they did, you see? And to hide all that information and make it occult. To keep it out of the availability of the public. The libraries of Alexandria and all of these great libraries whose treasure troves of information have been lost, have been stolen and hidden. Okay? It was only recently that people were able to go into the Vatican Library in the age of Aquarius after 1453 to go into the Vatican libraries and expose some of the Apocrypha that wasn't even made known, that wasn't even known to be still extant. All right. Some of the information regarding this and history of this world is being held and hidden that was hidden during the age of Pisces. Okay. And it's supposed to be made available and to the general public in the age of Aquarius. Well, the internet started that. And then the great monetization occurred that slowed that up. But I'm of the mind that because we are in the age of Aquarius, which is the age of disbursement of information, by virtue of Gemini being in the 5th place, because it's only just Libra in the 9th place of Aquarius. You understand what I'm talking about here? Then the information eventually will become available again to everyone. Right? We got to do our part to keep them aware in the inner rim. All right. I can see comments on this other page. All right. But damn, did I end it? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. I think I just ended my stream. That's my presentation for today, y'all. All right. I went all the way back to the Olmec demonstration. All right. The next time I do this, we'll cover different parts of different ages. We got several years to go back and measure. All right. Peace.